Hello, my name is David Nolan, and I'm the host of Actuary Voices, the podcast from the American Academy of Actuaries. Today, as we celebrate Black History Month, I'm speaking with Gloria Gilliam, the president of the IABA, the International Association of Black Actuaries. Gloria, thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome to Actuary Voices.
Thanks for having me, David.
We like to start these podcasts with an icebreaker. So the first question I've got for you is, what's something interesting or unusual that people might not know about you?
Man, that's more of a trick question for me because I think everybody knows I'm quite an open book. So it's hard for me to pick something that no one knows about me. But I would say maybe what I think I hide the most is that I actually really enjoy my work. And non-actuaries who know me know that I talk them ears off about random actuarial stuff. So I think in that sense, in my professional work, I may be a closeted nerd.
Well, it sounds like you're not closeted if you're an open book and you talk about it a lot.
I feel like I'm not, at work, I don't talk about work as much as I talk about work outside of work.
I got you. Okay. You're a casualty actuary, right?
That's correct, yeah.
And you enjoy that specialty?
Yes. It's lovely. I think the most interesting part about being a casualty actuary is that I can explain things to my non-actuarial audience very well. People find it very interesting. I think a lot of times people think of an actuary and they think, oh, this is you calculate how long I live. But that's when I'm like, wait till you hear what else we do, It's like, we touch all your life, so I really enjoy it.
Good. Yeah, I personally tend to find P&C issues the most digestible as well. And that's not to say there aren't other areas that are digestible, but then they can get a bit in the weeds as well. So, well, I'm interested in finding out how people became actuaries. It's a bit of a niche profession. So can you tell us a little bit about the path you took?
Yeah, so I blame my father for this. My father introduced me to being an actuary. He's a trained engineer by trade. My grades were always really good, so he knew that I would be in STEM. I obviously didn't want to be an actuary because I don't know, no one has ever heard of it. I really wanted to be a flight attendant. And he said, that's basically being a waitress in the air. I think you can do something else. And I was like, okay, I guess. He introduced me to it. And at first I went into school for engineering. And then we changed it to math. And then once I was done with my math degree, I didn't know what I was going to do. And he's like, you could be an actuary. So I said, no, I went to grad school instead. And then when I was in grad school, he was like, you could still be an actuary. So I became an actuary. And then I took an exam when I was in grad school and I was looking for work. And it was just so happened to be the summertime, like the week before the IABA annual meeting. And he was like, if you're looking for work, there's this one meeting going on in New York. Do you want to go? So here I am. Mostly, this is my father's dream. So
Well,
thanks, Dad.
it seems like you're enjoying it, but yes, I can see you must be very persistent.
Begrudgingly enjoying it. If I enjoy it too much, I think about him being happy that I enjoy it. And I'm like, no, I'm angry.
And when you look back in the path that you took to becoming an actuary, when did you feel most supported and where did you feel that you were kind of left out on your own and had to figure things out?
I think I felt more supported my first 6 years, I would say 6 or 7 years of my job. I started working in a consulting firm and my team there was just it was a very dynamic team. It was very big and most of the people, it was basically very top heavy. So we had a lot of bosses, a lot of leadership. And we spent a lot of time at work. So it was not only were they supporting me or leading me through my actual work, but also through just personal life and how to navigate corporate. And this is back in the day when we went into the office. So we were seeing them all the time. I would have very random questions like, when you have a child, do you have a nanny or do you go to daycare? Do you quit school? Do you quit work? And just them being open to questions like that and just leading me through these are your options. You can go this way, and this is what the results will be. I felt very supported back then. When I didn't feel as supported, where I had to figure myself out, is when I switched jobs and I went to my new job. And I think with that, it was such a contrast to having this huge support of people who have known you since you were a baby actuary, right? To now being in a position where you're the expert. And I had to basically find my own path and find my network and build that from scratch, basically.
And when was there a moment that changed how you lead? It sounds like you were thrown into the deep end. I guess it's your most recent position when the strings were cut.
So I think my most influential point of how I lead is one day, one of my bosses early on, I kept going to him and saying, I have this issue. Here's an issue. Here's an issue. And he's like, take a step back. you realize you're bringing me a lot of problems and you're not bringing me any solutions. I tell my kids that now. I tell everybody that. It made me realize, like, my job is not to find a problem. My job is to be a problem solver. Once I figured that out, it became so clear to me some of the frustrations that people have with working with people, for example, is that maybe you're not asking the right questions. Someone is bringing you something, but maybe you didn't ask that. That's why you're frustrated. And just having that clear understanding of, like, what do you want from anyone that you're working with at home, at work, what exactly do you need? And are they bringing that back to you? And it goes the same way. Like, if someone requests something from me, I can't go back and say, hey, so-and-so didn't give it to me. It's like, no, that's not what they asked for, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think both professionally and personally, you can really see a difference between the people who come presenting solutions to problems they have foreseen and those who are coming, as you say, with the problems and leaving you to figure it out. It's a big difference.
Yes.
Well, we talked a little bit about leadership there. You're here today because you're the president of the International Association of Black Actuaries. It sounds like you were introduced to the organization before you became an actuary, but what led you on your path to becoming president, and what were the milestones along the way?
Yeah, I was introduced to the organization pretty early on. Obviously, I got my first job actually through IABA. And so I always felt the need to give back to IABA because they gave me so much. I joined the organization as soon as I was an actuary student back in 2010. And then I came back to volunteer fully in 2015 as a volunteer coordination leader. That experience was really good in just getting to know the organization and the people who are in the organization. And through that, I joined the board in 2018, and then I've just stayed on. I think this was more serving where I'm needed and not necessarily like an aim of mine, right? It wasn't that I wanted to be president or I wanted to be on the board, but just thinking about what the organization needs at that time.
We'll come back to the IABA in a moment, but I do want to refer back to something you said about being a student. Do you think the challenges that the students you're seeing coming up now are different than the ones that you had when you were a student?
I think yes and no. A lot more similarities, I think, than differences. Some of the challenges that I had coming up were just like not having someone who had been an actuary before, right? Like, my father wanted me to be an actuary, but he was basically my Google, right? Like, he was like, to be an actuary, you need to do this and this and this. But along the way, like early on, I didn't know, for example, you needed a special calculator for the exams because he didn't know that. But I think if I had more guidance in the community, it would have made my journey a lot easier. And these are the same issues that people have now. Just if you're going to be an actuary, if you're not aware, if your neighbor is not an actuary, it's really hard to go through this path without someone holding your hand. But what's different now is that obviously there's Google. You can search for things. Things like International Association of Black Actuaries. Obviously, we have a site and we have social media. So it's easy for you to be able to find a network without necessarily having people in your close proximity, which is what, in my time, you would have needed.
Sure. But it sounds to me like that even with the websites and Google and so on, you're not going to Google what calculator do I need for the exam. You do still need somebody to give you that advice. And I know that IABA provides that service to a lot of your students because I have been asked at conferences to do interview prep with some of your aspiring actuaries. You really do need some close connections in the profession if you're going to get off on the right foot.
Agreed. Yeah.
One of the things that I know that the IABA is trying to solve is the pipeline problem and the relatively limited number of Black actuaries that go from even knowing about the actuarial profession to thinking about it, becoming an actuary, and actually succeeding in becoming an actuary. Where do you think the pipeline breaks? Because I know you've been getting the word out a lot about the benefits of the profession.
Yeah, I think in terms of Black actuaries, sometimes I think that the pipeline breaks before it even starts, right? Like, that knowing about being an actuary is actually quite a way more challenging problem for us, for our community. And so we work really hard in terms of like creating awareness of the profession to begin with. So we partner with a lot of different organizations that work in high schools, for example. We are doing a big push in the last 2 years in connection with the CIS where we go to Black college expos and talk to aspiring college students about being an actuary. And we are still seeing people who have never heard of this profession who are in STEM. So in terms of awareness, like our pipeline is the pipeline that we have now could be much larger just because we don't have the awareness. But once people are aware of the profession, once you take the first exam, your first fail is a really big hindrance. Part of the reason why we try to get people into our community is to try to explain we have failed multiple exams. This is normal. This does not mean that you shouldn't be an actuary. Most people fail their first exam just because you've never done it before, right? And I think just catching people during that first failure is very important. We obviously have many programs, students, one of them being exam prep. I mentioned that before, where we make sure that we have a cohort of students. They come in if they're serious, they study for exams. For one exam, they take it. We pay for the study material, we pay for the exam. Just make sure that we try to catch them. And then also, if they don't pass, they're already in our system.
Right. Let me take a moment to remind listeners that you're listening to Actuary Voices, the podcast from the American Academy of Actuaries. On this podcast, we talk to Academy volunteers and leaders, as well as friends of the Academy, about what excites them about their work, both professionally or as an Academy volunteer. And, as a reminder, on the 9th of March, the Academy is hosting the inaugural Spring Policy Summit in Washington, D.C., which will provide actuaries with a focused opportunity to deepen their understanding of the policy landscape during this pivotal midterm election year. More details are available on our website at actuary.org. Please subscribe to Actuary Voices on your preferred podcast platform. Now, back to my conversation with Gloria Gilliam from the IABA. And do you want to tell us a little bit more about other programs that the IABA has that supports both students and younger professionals?
Okay. You're quizzing me here. So, just thinking through our pipeline, one of our biggest programs is obviously scholarship. We give a lot of scholarships every year to college students. And then also in line with that, we have boot camp, which is, you mentioned this before, that's the interview prep that you were talking about. Most of that happens during boot camp. And boot camp is a program that we do once a year. For the week leading up to our annual meeting, we send a few students over to whatever our annual meeting location is. And it's exactly what the name suggests. It's a boot camp to prepare you to be an actuary. So you're doing like case studies, you're doing interviews, we're looking through your resumes. But this is geared mostly towards college students. We also have exam prep, which I mentioned. This is in support of Exam P and Exam FM, which are the first two exams you take as an actuary. Just try to catch as many students as possible that don't have the support to take exams before. We have mentorship. And then in terms of professionals for non-students at this point, we just started our leadership development program. We piloted it last year and we've been hearing really good things. We have basically two levels of it. It's for people who are like trying to get into middle management. We have a program for them. And then we have another program for people who are in middle management trying to get into the more senior levels.
Yes, I talked to, I think it's Anthony Weatherspoon about the leadership program.
Yeah. Tony is one of our founders of the program. He's very passionate about it.
You mentioned mentorship because that's obviously very important. Can you tell us what are the main attributes of a really good mentor, the people who have success in bringing people through?
I think it goes both ways. It's hard to say someone is a really good mentor without having the good relationship with a mentee, right? It's very important that you match people, you get the right personality so that they can maintain the relationship. In terms of being a good mentor, maybe we talk about what's a good mentorship relationship, right? Is one that can be sustainable, one that is natural, one that doesn't feel like it's work to call the person. It's almost like a friendly banter, because that's when people really open up and tell you exactly what they need.
Okay, that's a great answer. It's an interesting perspective that I hadn't come across. And I understand that it's a relationship between two people, but it's important that that's given a chance to succeed by matching the right people together. Maybe we can go back a little bit and talk about the history of IABA, because I believe it's the oldest of the affinity groups. You had your 25th anniversary last year. So you're the most well-developed of the groups that represents subsections of actuaries. Do you want to tell us a little bit about its history and maybe looking into the future as well?
Yeah, it's interesting to hear whenever we are compared to the other affiliate groups. Yeah, we are quite mature because we've been around for a while. For the longest time, though, like it was very few people. I think goes back to what we were talking about with awareness when the internet really helped. When I'm sure when it was formed in DC, there was less than 100 members, right? And even when I first came to the annual meeting in 2010, I think we had just hit 100 people or 150 people. And now looking forward, currently, the last annual meeting, we had 600 plus people. What we're really excited, obviously, about the growth in the profession. I think trying to welcome people from all types of like data analytics backgrounds and just saying the actuarial profession is a good profession for you to be in. And with that, we will be able to expand the Black actuary population and also expand and keep it relevant for the general actuarial profession.
Sure. And looking into the future, what do you see as the big challenges or opportunities for IABA?
Man, I'm going back and forth between, IBA challenges are obviously the broader actuarial profession challenges. What I think about and worry about a bit is the fact that sometimes exams can be so daunting, right? And so you have people who have the same skill set as an actuary would have, like being a data scientist, for instance, who can go and get a job as a data scientist and doesn't need to take 10 exams. So the challenge going forward is trying to convince the population and our talent that it is worth being an actuary, like taking the exams is worth it. It does create a level of respect and understanding. From my experience, management and generally just people really respect what you have to say as an actuary because you were able to be disciplined and take the 10 exams, right? Opportunities wise, I think about AI, obviously. There are parts of the actuarial profession that aren't as fancy, right? We all are analytical people and like to think. Some of our day-to-day jobs is very tactical. Some of that can be taken away, or we maybe not taken away. Taken away seems very negative. They can be given to AI, right? So all the data stuff that you don't like to do, we can give that to AI. And even documentation, for instance, AI can take a first cut. So when we think about that and even emerging risks, it's very exciting for IABA to be a part of like educating the upcoming population or generation about what the actual profession is going to be in the future.
Sure. And perhaps a little bit more specifically, we're going through a period where diversity, equity, and inclusion programs there's a retrenchment. A lot of organizations started them and said a lot of grandiose sounding things about supporting different groups of people, but we're seeing a withdrawal of some of that. Do you think that's going to impact IABA's work?
I agree that it's not the ideal climate, right? I would say 2020 was probably more of an anomaly than the norm. So it's not like things are being taken away from us. We just back from the spike that we had in 2020. Lucky for us, we work with partners that have very passionate. They've always been passionate about diversity and inclusion, and it's seen through their work. They've been partnering with us before the spike in 2020. So they're going to continue to partner with us. So while diversity and inclusion seems to be a threat for the climate, it isn't for our partners. And I think that we'll continue to see the support that we saw back then because the people who support us are very passionate about it.
And I think for the American Academy of Actuaries, we've been talking about is that actuaries can't adequately do their jobs unless they're representing all of America. And in order to represent the interests of all of America, they've got to hear from all of those different groups to ensure that they're taking into account all the different experiences that people have. And so that's why it's so important for the American Academy of Actuaries. Have you got any advice for early career actuaries, especially those, for example, who don't see people like themselves in leadership roles? Because that is another problem. It's not just a pipeline problem, but it's an issue of rising in the ranks once somebody does qualify. Have you got some words of advice for them about how they can continue to forge ahead?
Yeah, I think that it's hard not to see yourself in the leaders, but you have it, right? I think imposter syndrome is really tough. That could be holding you back. If you have imposter syndrome, but you see someone who looks just like you doing it, then it's easier for you to say, I can do it. So because we don't have that, you just got to get over the imposter syndrome. You have to find ways to work through it and get some confidence that you can do it. To go back to what my African parents will say, those people in leadership, do they have two heads? No. So if they can do it, you can do it too.
Good advice. Good advice. Gloria, I really appreciate you being on with us today. We have a new aspect of our podcast in that we ask each guest to leave the next guest a question. So the last guest had a question about what can actuaries do to make more people know what being an actuary is. So that's the question for you. And then you get the opportunity to ask the next guest an awkward question as well.
I think what actuaries can do to make the public more aware of what actuaries are is just be like me and always talk about what actuaries do. Just find a way to sip it into the conversation. So just, always try to pull that in. I mean, we do a lot in terms of risk. The public is very scared of risk in general. So trying to fit that into what actuaries do.
Yeah, we have a saying that there are 7 actuaries in everybody's life, even if they don't know that any of them exist. And that's certainly the case.
I have to take them back with me.
Yeah. Okay, well, what question would you like to leave our next guest?
Goodness. Now, I'll leave them an easy one. So, what's the easiest way to explain to the public what actuaries do?
That's a very straightforward question, and I appreciate it. Thank you. Gloria, I really appreciate our conversation today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Today, as we celebrate Black History Month, I was speaking with Gloria Gilliam, the president of the IABA, the International Association of Black Actuaries. You can find the IABA at blackactuaries.org. My name is David Nolan, and I'm the host of Actuary Voices, the podcast from the American Academy of Actuaries. Please visit our website, actuary.org, for a wealth of information about the work that the Academy does. You can follow us on Facebook, X, and LinkedIn as well. And of course, please subscribe to this podcast on your preferred podcast platform.